During the final persecution, the seat of the Holy Roman Church will be occupied by Peter the Roman, who will feed the sheep in many tribulations, after which the seven-hilled city will be destroyed, and the terrible judge will judge his people. The end.
Is Malachi describing the end of the Catholic Church or the end of the world? Is Peter the Roman the last pope who will follow the current pontiff, Benedict XVI?
It is striking that at least one pope had a similar mystical vision. In 1909, while granting an audience, Pope Pius X leaned back and closed his eyes. Suddenly he awoke and cried out, "What I see is terrifying. Will it be myself? Will it be my successor?" What is certain is that the Pope will quit Rome, and in leaving the Vatican he will have to walk over the dead bodies of his priests. Pius' prophecy was fulfilled neither in his own time nor in that of the next pontiff. According to Malachi's vision of the church tribulation, it applies to the success of Gloria Oliver, the next pope but one. Now here are some other similar and startling prophecies about the end and the popes. John Bosco, from 40 Dreams of John Bosco. St. Bosco narrated his vision on May 30, 1862. Does this speak of John Paul II? John Bosco vividly described visions of turbulent water and persecution. Enemy boats attacking the ship as the Pope sought to bring the ship between the two columns, one with a statue of Virgin labeled Auxilium Christianorum, or Help of Christians, the second much taller with a host labeled Salus Credentium, or Salvation of the Faithful. John Bosco said, "Suddenly the Pope falls gravely wounded. Immediately those who are with him run to help him and they lift him up. A second time the Pope is struck. He falls again and dies. A shout of victory and joy rings out among the enemies. From their ships an unspeakable mockery arises." These of course sound much like John Paul II, who has promoted both the Eucharist and the Blessed Mother, and who established Mystery of the Rosary, which were followed by an historic encyclical on the Eucharist. Those are certainly pillars of the Catholic Church. We must also call to mind the shooting of John Paul II on May 13, 1981 in St. Peter's Square. Or is this a composite image that could relate to both John Paul II and his immediate predecessor, John Paul I, both of whom were striking? It may symbolize the way Pope John Paul I came in, served for 33 days, and then died in 1979, succeeded by recently deceased John Paul II, who promoted the Blessed Mother and Eucharist as few pontiffs have. No pope in history was more dedicated to the Virgin Mary than John Paul II, and he had declared the current years as the year of the Eucharist. So dedicated was the Pope that an M for Mary was placed on his casket, and these two circled into the St. Faustina Revelation. As Cardinal Ratzinger pointed out in his funeral homily Friday, 15th April 2005, the Holy Father found the purest reflection of God's mercy in the Mother of God. Also, evidence suggests that John Paul II was the Pope spoken of at Fatima. Pope John Paul II predicted a new springtime in church. The Catholic Church may well be on the very threshold of deeds. Does the dream of John Bosco speak of Benedict XVI and his rather quick election? John Bosco says, "But hardly is the pontiff dead than another takes his place. The pilots, having met together, have elected the Pope so promptly that the news of the death of the Pope coincides with the news of the election of the successor. The adversaries began to lose courage." We are looking at other prophecies surrounding the popes. St. Hildegard, 12th century. "The time is coming when princes and people will reject the authority of the Pope. Some countries will prefer their own church rulers to the Pope. The German Empire will be divided. Before the comet comes, many nations, the good excepted, will be scorched by want and famine. The great nation in the ocean that is inhabited by people of different tribes and descents will be devastated by earthquake, storm, and tidal wave. It will be divided and in great part submerged. The nation will also have many misfortunes at sea and lose its colonies. After the great comet, the great nation will be devastated by earthquakes, storms, and great waves of water, causing much want and plagues. The ocean will also flood many other nations, so that all coastal cities will live in fear, with many destroyed. All sea coast cities will be fearful, and many of them will be destroyed by tidal waves, and most living creatures will be killed, and even those who escape will die from a horrible disease. For in none of these cities does a person live according to the laws of God. A powerful wind will rise in the north, carrying heavy fog and the densest dust, and it will fill their throats and eyes, so that they will cease their butchery and be stricken with a great fear. Now, the next one is by Bishop Christianus Ajeda, 12th century. In the 20th century, there will be wars and fury that will last a long time, whose provinces shall be emptied of their inhabitants, and kingdoms shall be thrown into confusion. In many places the land shall be left untied, and there shall be great slaughters of the upper class. The right hand of the world shall fear the left, and the north shall prevail over the south. About Wedin the Orient, 12th century. The great monarch and the great pope will precede Antichrist. The nations will be at war for 4 years, and a great part of the world will be destroyed. The pope will go over the sea carrying the sign of redemption on his forehead. The great monarch will come to restore peace, and the pope will share in the victory. John of Vituguero, 13th century. The Pope will change his residence, and the church will not be defended for 25 months or more, because during all that time there will be no Pope in Rome. After many tribulations, a Pope shall be elected out of those who survived the persecution. Johannes Fred, 1204 to 1257. When the great time will come, in which mankind will face its last hard trial, it will be foreshadowed by striking changes in nature. The alteration between cold and heat will become more intensive. Storms will have more catastrophic effects. Earthquakes will destroy great regions, and the sea will overflow many lowlands. Not all of it will be the result of natural causes, but mankind will penetrate into the bowels of the earth and will reach into the clouds, gambling with his own existence. Before the powers of destruction will succeed in their design, the universe will be thrown into disorder, and the age of iron will plunge into nothingness. When the nights will be filled with more intensive cold and days with heat, a new life will begin in nature. The heat means radiation from the earth, the cold the waning light of the sun. Only a few years more and you will become aware that sunlight has grown perceptibly weaker. When even your artificial light will cease to give service, the great event in the heavens will be near. Saint Vincent Ferrer, 14th century. In the days of peace that are to come after the desolation of revolutions and wars, before the end of the world, the Christians will become so lax in their religion that they will refuse to receive the sacrament of confirmation, saying it is an unnecessary sacrament. John of the Cleft Rock, 14th century. Towards the end of the world, tyrants and hostile mobs will rob the church and the clergy of their possessions, and will afflict and martyr them. Those who heap the most abuse upon them will be held in high esteem. At that time, the Pope with his cardinal will have to flee Rome in tragic circumstances to a place where they will be unknown. The Pope will die a cruel death in his exile. The sufferings of the church will be much greater than at any previous time in her history. But God will raise a holy Pope, and the angels will rejoice. Enlightened by God, this man will rebuild almost the whole world through his holiness. He will lead everyone to the true faith. Pope Pius IX, 1878. Since the world is against God and his church, it is evident that he has reserved the victory over his enemies to himself. This will be more obvious when it is considered that the root of all our present evils is to be found in the fact that those with talents and vigor crave earthly pleasures, and not only desert God but repudiate him altogether. Thus it appears they cannot be brought back in any other way except through an act that cannot be ascribed to any secondary agency, and thus all will be forced to look up to the supernatural. There will come a great wonder which will fill the world with astonishment. This wonder will be preceded by a triumph of revolution. The church will suffer exceedingly. Her servants and her chieftains will be mocked, scourged, and martyred. Prophecy of St. Francis of Assisi, 1226 AD. There will be an uncanonically elected pope who will cause a great schism. There will be diverse thoughts preached which will cause many, even those in the different orders, to doubt. Yea, even agree with those heretics which will cause my order to divide. Then will there be such universal dissension and persecution that if those days were not shortened, even the elect would be lost. This was in Reverend Coleton, The Reign of Antichrist, Tan Books, 1974, page 130. Some believe this prophecy referred to the controversy surrounding the election of Pope John XXIII and Cardinal Siri, but it could refer to the next and the last Pope, Peter the Roman. The last Pope may just cut Catholics loose from unity and the papacy, causing total disruption and confusion. John Paul II said he saw the ongoing defection. He also believed in the second prophecy of Fatima about the apostasy coming in the Catholic Church. It is noteworthy that John Paul II appointed 185 of the cardinals who elected Benedict XVI. It may be that John Paul II took steps to ensure a conservative pope followed him. Sister Catherine Emmerich, 1823. Is this schism? Could Sister Emmerich be referring here to the Novus Ordo, one world order church, whose baneful effects are now so apparent everywhere, especially in view of what she said in April 1823? Listen. I saw many pastors cherishing dangerous ideas against the church. I saw, among other things, the church under N. In all the rooms lay his children, that is, his plans, a full collection of his views. He had set fire to the house, and I with others had to save the goods and convey them to the sheepfold. They built a large, singular, extravagant church which was to embrace all creeds with equal rights. Evangelicals, Catholics, and all denominations. A true communion of the unholy with one shepherd and one flock. There was to be a pope, a salaried pope without possessions. All was made ready, many things finished, but in place of an altar were only abomination and desolation. Such was the new church to be, and it was for it he had set fire to the old one, but God designed otherwise.